Just short of my 21st birthday, my life was a mess. I was working as a surveyor out in the fields all day, didn't have a girlfriend, drinking and smoking too much, out of shape. And the Army was after me for 2 years of service. I said, I'd better take charge of my life about now. Now, not taking charge of my life kind of ran in the family. My father and all of his forebears had always pretty much done what their fathers did before them and whatever came along. They didn't plan their futures very well. And I came from a history of not planning your future. But it was telling on me, because the guys who had planned their future were going ahead to be doctors and lawyers, and I was doing nothing. Well, my first step was to sign up to be in the Army Reserve, which was only 6 months out of my life instead of 2 years of active duty. And in the Army Reserve, I was in a company, a signal company, headed by a guy named Sergeant Gregory. And Sergeant Gregory needed help running the company. I could type and I could file, and fairly much knew how to do things. So I made myself useful to Sergeant Gregory. Come back to that story later. And in the meantime, I said, I better get a college degree. That's what it takes to get ahead in this world. So I went back to the university, and this time I was serious about it. I got a red diploma after a year and a half, graduated, and went to work for IBM. There's a story there about not taking charge of your life. The job I really wanted was with Sylvania down in Silicon Valley, which was just getting started. But the letter never came, and I didn't have the wit, the gumption to call them and say, where's the letter? So I took the job with IBM. Anyhow, IBM taught me how to program. They taught me all about computers. And in 2 years, they needed people over in Vietnam. I said, you taking charge of my life? Yes, this sounds like a good thing. They'll pay me much more money over in Vietnam. Maybe I can get ahead in this life. But there was a problem. Sergeant Gregory. Yes. IBM needs me over in Vietnam. Well, by all means, go. There's a problem, Sergeant Gregory. I have a critical specialty in this unit as a telephone guy, and you're not supposed to let me go. He said, well, damn, the Army's not going to screw itself up like that. He used more colorful language. How'd you like to be a cook? So he changed me from a telephone specialist to a cook so he could let me go. Scratching my back, I'd scratch his, and I went to Vietnam. While I was in Vietnam, I did a lot of good programming, and I taught people, and I really had a wonderful time, made a lot of money, sent it back to my father, who handled my investments for me with a broker that I had met when I was working at IBM, so I was starting to take charge of my life. And, among other things, in Vietnam, they paid all of our living expenses, our house, our meals, and everything else. That was good. However, they paid for it by reimbursing us in dollars, and we had to change it at an absurd exchange rate. So, and they reported this as income to the Internal Revenue Service, so we had to pay a whole lot of tax on value that we didn't get. I said, this doesn't make sense. IBM, you should, instead of making us change the dollars to Vietnamese piastres, you change the dollars to Vietnamese piastres. And I wrote a paper saying that's what we should do. IBM should change the money to piastres instead of us. And by the way, they wouldn't have to worry about us changing on the black market, which was a threat. Well, this paper went from Saigon to Honolulu to San Francisco to Washington, and it got approved in pretty record time. And the word came back down, do it. That's what you ought to do. And it let me know the power of writing, communicating my thoughts. At the same time, I've been programming stuff, but the real trick in programming is to figure out what needs to be programmed and to write down what the program's supposed to do before you do it. So I learned how to write. I practiced writing more and more. And this changed my career. So I progressed in IBM. After I'd been there for 12 years, I noticed that promotions were going to people who didn't look like me. It was the diversity thing. And I said, they don't need me, I don't need them. I got out of there and went to somebody else, Booz Allen and Hamilton, and worked for them for a year, and said, working for other people doesn't make sense. I can do a better job myself. So I became an independent programmer. I did that for 20 years and kept the money I made myself instead of sharing it with an employer. It made a lot of sense. So I had taken charge of my life a couple of ways. So the latest was starting my own company. And then I had enough money from my stock investments and from my investments in buying some houses. I didn't need to continue to work. I said, why am I working? I don't need to do this. So I retired. For my 3 ungrateful children who did not take charge of their lives and had been taught in school that white men were bad, I'm white. And so they were taught not to like me. And I looked at that and said, do I need this? And my wife was kind of, she didn't care one way or another. So I said, nope, I'm wasting my time. I'm out of here. I'm still only in my 60s. I have time to start over. And I did exactly that. I got divorced. And I came to Ukraine in 2007 looking to start my life over, and guess what? It's worked. So that would be my lesson for you. You have the same mentality that the Soviets did, of somebody will give me a job, somebody will do this. No, you have to take charge of your own life, do things that you know are going to be successful, and don't take no for an answer. Don't let obstacles stop you. You take charge of your life and make yourself a success. Madam Toastmaster.